Oh boy, we're doing it again. We're doing it again, everybody. This time, Chapter 1, The Yellow Rose. Before, in the last episode, I meant to say Deepy is her name, not Deepy. Her name is Deepy, because she's going to be called that for quite a lot. Chapter 1, The Yellow Rose. Her parents decided to call her Deepy for short. If they tried to call her D, ponies would ask what D stood for, and they'd have to give the shameful answer. They'd treat her like any other filly. All they wanted was for her to be happy and have a normal life, free from any shame or ridicule. And despite the embarrassing name, Oakwood and Peachseed couldn't help but love her to bits. She was a sweet filly, very well behaved. She never cried too much, kept her room clean, always obeyed her parents, and was enormously kind, generous, and eager to meet new ponies. Especially stallions. As soon as she could run and talk, if they had a pair of balls, she would say hi. Living in Baltimore, this meant that there were a lot of stallions to greet, and even after her parents wanted her not to talk to strangers enough, that she stopped to say hello to every stallion that walked past. Her eyes started lingering to them, and her smile was always bright as she beheld their faces. It was that they were different from her little Deepy, and little Deepy was terribly curious. And at the tender age of 6, she already asked Daddy about weird things between her legs as they played together on the living room rug. Well, he worked up the nerve sitting up and lying on his back. It was inevitable. Deepthroat Cockslut liked to look at nuts more than candy, and when Oakwood's impressive set already kept his thighs more spread than the average stallion, it was only a matter of time before she asked. Those are my testicles, he explained. All stallions have them, and they use to make foals with mares. Huh, she said. She stared at her father's balls for a while longer, and already sweat was trickling down his neck as Peachseed looked up from her book, nervously awaiting her daughter's response. They're very sensitive, Peachseed said after a beat. It's not polite to touch stallions there. Yes, Mommy, she said sweetly. But this new information only ignited her curiosity. In the naked world of Equestria, Deepthroat Cockslut had plenty of sack to stare at. And stare she did. Her parents tried to teach her manners, that it wasn't polite to stare, and it would be best to ignore them altogether. But she couldn't help it. Nearly every day she went out with her parents, she had a last long comment to offer on a random stallion's genitals. She thought they were all great, whether they be big or small, hairy or smooth, sweat or clean. It was sweet in a way, but mostly concerning for her parents. So when she started school, she was told at least 100 times not to talk or look at any other of her classmates' testicles. Yes, Daddy, she said. For the most part, she couldn't help it. The colts in her class were so much smaller than stallions in all ways, but she did as her parents told her. And she kept her mouth shut, unless they were playing doctor, of course. That was her favorite game. She got a few complaints from parents, and there were some parent-teacher conferences about inappropriate touching, but the teachers always assured her parents that it was normal for little Deepy to be curious at this age, and that it was purely innocent. And for the most part, it was, until she turned 11. Almost every pony had their cutie marks at this point, and she was the last in her class to get to her great shame. Even if she was friends with almost every colt in the class, and other fillies still called her blank flank, and the colts couldn't really protect her. Her parents told her that she was simply a late bloomer, and that it would come when it was time. But that didn't stop every pony from worrying about it, especially her parents. When cutie marks and names tended to go off hoof and hoof, they were plagued with nightmares about her daughter coming home with a lewd image on her flank. A name could be shortened. A cutie mark was unmutable. One of her closest friends, a brown colt with red mane, named Sawdust, had already gotten his cutie mark for lumberjacking, and as was appropriate for the profession, he began getting large growth spurts at the age of 12. Deepy had grown, but he was a good head taller than her, and already putting on muscle. All of those changes were fun to monitor, so when he galloped up to her in the schoolyard, and she said in a cracky, pubescent voice, "Hey, Deepy, want to play doctor?" She only had one answer. "Of course!" A lot of the other ponies had outgrown the game of pretend, so the patch of glass behind the toy shed was usually abandoned. Sawdust was the only colt who still liked playing this game. She felt like hugging him for suggesting it. Oh God, where am I? I forgot where I was. Ah, here I am. "So, who's gonna be doctor?" he asked. "I want to!" She jumped at the opportunity. "All right," he chuckled. They found a Y-shaped stick for her to wear around her neck, like a stethoscope. And once she was in character, she said, "Time for your checkup, young colt. Lay on my table." Sawdust lay down on the patch of grass, and Deepy made a big, slow around, poking with her stethoscope and going, After she had done this for long enough, she said, "Okay, now let's measure you." Without a measuring tape, she just stretched her hooves out and moved alongside him until she reached his head and hind legs. "You're almost getting too big to measure, Sawdust," she said. "My dad says I'm going to be a big stallion," Sawdust admitted proudly. She poked at his arms with her hooves. "Your muscles are getting really big." "Really?" he said with a blush he couldn't help but flex for her. She squeezed his bicep. "Yeah, you must be the strongest colt on the playground," she complimented. All the praise and touching left Sawdust feeling warm and comfortable. So when Deepthroat Cockslut continued her checkup, it wasn't a total surprise to her to see that his penis had slipped out of its sheath. It wasn't a total surprise to her to see that his penis had slipped out of its sheath. Being the experienced doctor she was, this was not the first penis she had ever seen, but normally they didn't slip out until she gave her testicle exam. But for the sweet little filly, nothing was amiss. "Your wiener's getting really big too," she said. "Really? You think so?" Sawdust said, even more nervous and flattered than before. "Yeah, I could barely fit my hooves around it," she said, giving the thick black shaft a squeeze. He gave a little moan. Deepy hardly noticed, still preoccupied with the chance in her friend. "Even your balls are bigger, and they don't usually hang so much." The sweet filly rolled the orbs around in her hooves. I don't... But that feels really good," Sawdust told her. "Really?" she asked. Colts normally say they like being touched there, but this wasn't a different kind of pleasure. "How good?" she said, fondling her. "Really, really good," he admitted. His preteen cock had more than just flopped out. It was standing tall and diamond hard, something that Deepy hadn't quite seen in her time. "Is it supposed to do that?" she said. "Yeah, it's doing that a lot lately," he told her, just as clueless as she was. "Huh," she said. "And it feels good when I touch it?" Sweet little Deepy started to rub Sawdust's erection. "Yeah," he moaned. There a moment of silence where all that could be heard was the chirping of birds, laughing and shouting foals, and Sawdust heavily breathing as the little pink filly played with his dick. "What else feels good on it?" she said. Baths, he answered. They're so warm and wet. They always make it get hard. Huh, she repeated again. Deepy didn't feel the tug of destiny on her, but she still answered its call with the next words. My mouth is wet and warm. You want to lick it? He asked. I mean, if it doesn't taste bad, she said. Do you think it would feel good? Yeah, he said quickly. I mean, if you want to. Why not? She said without an ounce of hesitation. She leaned forward and gave Sawdust's stiff, throbbing tip a long, loving lick. That's a mouthful. That's a fucking mouthful. Long, loving lick. Oh, fuck, we're close to the end of this chapter. Let's continue. Oh, he moaned. What, was that good? She asked. Deepy, that was really good. He was already panting from pleasure and adrenaline. Can you do it again? Sure, she said. Another long lick, this time more along the shaft, wetting it with droplets of her saliva. It tasted mostly fleshy and maybe a little salty, but she loved the smooth texture and the way it twitched at her at her ministrations? What? Alright, whatever. This is fun, she admitted. Hey, I just got an idea, Sawdust said, grinning eagerly. What if you put it in your mouth? Like, suck on it? She asked. Yeah. He said, okay, she said. His excitement was wearing off on her. And she was starting to feel something in his warmth, especially between her legs. Lining up the shaft with her hooves, she held over the tip, watching the flare throb, seeing some very clear, sticky liquid pouring from it, but she knew it was safe. Something she made almost the same sticky stuff come from her privates, too. In that moment, Deepthroat Cockslut was in her element. Her curiosity about what it would feel like to both of them as was overwhelming, and she wanted to know about taste and smell and just about everything else too. Her natural generosity was taking over too, as she wanted nothing more than to make her good friend Sawdust feel as good as he possibly could. His moans already made her so happy, but at the same time, touching him and licking him made her happy too. His hard shaft felt good to her hooves and her mouth, and something very deep inside of her wanted it more of it. So little Deepthroat Cockslut opened her mouth wide and wrapped her lips around the head of his dick before her first blowjob. Oh yeah, Sawdust moaned louder than before. She stopped for a moment, pulling off. It sounded like that felt really good. It did, he said. Keep going, please. Do you want me to go further down? Will that feel good? Yes, please, as much as you can. The desperation for pleasure in his voice was obvious, and she didn't want to keep him waiting. She took the tip in her mouth once more, licking along it with broad strokes that earned more creaky pleasure noises from Sawdust. Deepy had no trouble going farther somehow. She knew to keep her teeth stuck behind her lips. She had been told how sensitive stallions could be down there, and that last thing she wanted was to hurt her friend. She didn't have to be told to twist her head or swipe her tongue as she took inch after inch of horny teenage cock into her mouth. But the real magic was when the head reached the back of her mouth, as if she had been doing it all her life. Deepthroat Cockslut took it further again, gaining inch after inch of meat until the cock was deep in her throat. Now both of them moaned. Sawdust never imagined his cock could feel this good in a mare's mouth, but Deepy had never imagined how good a cock could feel in her throat. She felt an amazing fullness, a glorious stretch that filled her with more and more warmth, the mare parts producing wetness from her first true moment of arousal. Oh, Deepy, sweet Celestia, Sawdust moaned, but Deepy kept going, wanting more of his hot flesh, more of that wonderful, hot, full feeling, wanting more cock in her. She reached the bottom. She felt her lips bump against his fleshy sheath, bearing fuzz of new pubes, and she felt this eager young balls resting warmly against her throat. She was full now, twisting, licking, and sucking happily on the cock before her, and it was the best feeling in her life. The same went for Sawdust. "Deepy, something's he cried. Deepy didn't know what was happening. She felt Sawdust's cock pulsating, the flare swelling, the excitement building, and it only made her more excited, and she sucked all the more hungrily. Suddenly, a warm, salty fluid poured into her throat, backflowing into her mouth a little. It was strong, earthy, hearty, I believe, or heady. Nothing like nothing she had ever tasted before, but it was delicious. It tasted as good as the cock felt, as the same good as Sawdust's creaky, ecstatic cries to her ears. She drank it with relish. She wanted more. His penis filled her with such incredible warmth, such a fantastic pleasure. It felt like she was going to explode. Every gulp of sticky stuff filled her with such burning joy that she didn't want to hold it in anymore. Her body tensed. She would have told Sawdust that something was happening to her too, but that would have meant releasing his cock from her hungry, loving muzzle. But she drank the last drops of him. Pleasure began to overtake her, moans ripping from deep in her throat as she shook her tongue and her lips, never ceasing their attention. With her own cute cries, Deepthroat Cockslut reached her first orgasm. She, and just as Sawdust had, her body was raked with fiery, ecstatic spasms, and her mind went blank with pleasure. All the felt was the wonderful feeling of being stuffed full by a thick stallion of belonging. Through the dizzy haze of pleasured mind, her heard Sawdust saying, "Stop!" She pulled away from him. She was breathing hard, just as hard as she was. "That was amazing," he said. I know," she said. "It felt so good, and it tasted so wonderful." She saw a few lingering drops of white on the tip of the shaft. "I wonder what it is." "I don't know," he said. Deepy licked the drops from his tip, earning a sharp gasp. She hummed while she felt the delicious salty taste spread on her tongue. "I don't know that could happen," he said. "Me either," she said. "Want to do it again?" "Yes, please," he said. The eager colt wrapped his hooves around Deepy's curly blonde mane and pulled her head towards his cock, but she accepted the offering all too eagerly, more than willing to suck dick some more. Over the course of recess, Deepthroat Cockslut earned 2 more orgasms from Sawdust, swallowing each load in the midst of her own climax. When the bell rang, his cock was buried into her muzzle, all the way to the sheath. "Want to do this again tomorrow?" she asked, as they head back to class. "Yeah," he said with eager nods, and gave her a puzzled look. "Deepy, look!" He pointed at her flank. Sure enough, Deepy's butt was adorned with the image of a golden yellow rose. When the teacher, a kindly old mare, noticed, she brought her up to the front of the class, thinking she got it for picking flowers. "Would you like to tell the class how you got your cutie mark, Deepy?" "Yeah, I got it sucking on Sawdust's wiener," she said enthusiastically. With a note home to her parents, another parent-teacher meeting scheduled. Deepy and Sawdust were told never to do that again, and for the most part, they managed to cut down on the cocksucking to about once every other week. But with Colt's muttering and starting to realize how good such a thing would feel, Deepthroat Cockslut suddenly found very many friends willing to play doctor. The other fillies didn't take kindly to her, and her parents and teachers took all measures to stop her from sucking dick. But it didn't matter. Deepthroat Cockslut had discovered what she loved most in the world, and nothing could keep her from it. Thank you all for listening to me horribly read this story. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment, or dislike it, I don't care. But thank you all for watching. Hit the subscribe button for more of these videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.